Just imagine this. A quiet
That's
morning
my
at Heathrow.
bag.
The kind of
There's
day
been a
where royal
terrible
security
mistake.
usually glides through
This
without a
is
whisper.
outrageous.
But then
I
everything
demand
stops.
to know what's
Queen
happening here.
Camilla, a moment from boarding a private flight, is suddenly halted by airport security. A single X-ray image flashes on the monitor, and within seconds, alarms go off, royal guards rush in, and London is thrown into absolute disbelief. What did they see, and why would it involve the Queen Consort herself? Before we dive deeper into this emotional and truly unbelievable royal family moment, make sure to like this video. Subscribe if you enjoy stories that uncover the human side of royalty, and share this with someone who loves a little mystery mixed with royal drama. Your support helps these powerful stories keep coming. There are moments in royal history that begin quietly, so quietly, in fact, that no one realizes they're about to become part of something unforgettable. This story starts on a gray morning at Heathrow Airport, the kind of morning where the sun seems too tired to rise, and the air carries that calm, sleepy hush the city wears before the day begins. Most people rushing through Terminal 5 had no idea that, within minutes, they would witness something that would dominate every headline in London. Queen Camilla arrived at the airport in her usual understated fashion. Not grand, not loud, just a confident, familiar presence of someone who has spent decades navigating public life. She wore a deep navy coat, elegant yet simple, her hair styled neatly, her expression calm. Royal aides walked ahead with soft urgency, clearing the path as cameras flashed from a distance. They weren't expecting drama. Not today. Not ever, in a place as routine as an airport. The plan was straightforward. A private flight, a quick departure, a short engagement overseas. The Royal Guard team accompanying her had done this 100 times. They moved with practiced choreography, steps measured, eyes alert, ears tuned to the smallest disturbance. To them, airports were predictable. X-ray machines, metal detectors, scanners, all just background noise in the larger ballet of royal protection. And then came the moment that broke the rhythm. Her personal handbag, small, structured, and almost iconic, was placed on the conveyor belt like always. A few trays, a scarf, a pair of gloves, the usual polished items expected from a royal. Everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. The bag slid to the X-ray tunnel, the bright screen flickering silently as the airport officer leaned closer. He blinked, then blinked again, his body still in a way that only happens when a person's brain suddenly demands extra time to process something unexpected. He frowned, slow, deep, cautious. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, a reflection, a mistake, but the shape was still there. Clear, dark, dense, and unmistakably unusual. He tapped the screen lightly with the back of his pen. Another officer walked over, then a third. None of them spoke for several seconds. It was as if the air itself refused to move. Queen Camilla watched from just a few steps away. She had been through this routine thousands of times. She knew the rhythm, and this silence did not fit. A small crease formed between her brows. She glanced at her guard. Is something wrong? The guard didn't answer. He couldn't. His eyes were fixed on the officers, who now exchanged looks that carried both confusion and something else. Something close to alarm. That was when the Royal Guard chief, a tall man with sharp eyes and the expression of someone permanently calculating risk, stepped forward. His voice was controlled, quiet, but firm. What seems to be the issue? The officer at the screen inhaled slowly. Sir, we found something in the Queen Consort's bag. Something we can't identify. You could feel the tension shift instantly. Invisible but heavy, like the air thickened without warning. The guard chief's jaw tightened. Show me. The officer pressed a button, enlarging the image. The screen displayed a dark, compact shape, its edges odd, neither sharp nor smooth. Something about it looked layered, almost folded. At first glance, it could have been anything, but at second glance, it didn't resemble any everyday object. And that uncertainty was a problem. Airport protocol was strict, even for royalty. If something suspicious appeared on the scanner, even if the owner was a queen consort, there were steps that had to be followed. Is this a restricted item? The officer whispered. The chief didn't answer immediately. His eyes narrowed. His posture changed, not dramatically, but subtly enough that every guard in the vicinity straightened. He recognized the importance of the moment. When something involved a royal, nothing is allowed to slip into gray zone. "Do not touch the bag," he instructed. "Nobody touches anything until I say so." A small ripple of reaction spread among the airport staff. A murmur, a half-swallowed gasp. People realized something serious was happening, but it was the passengers around them who really felt the shift first. Human instincts are powerful. The way people sense that something's off long before they understand why. Heads turned. Conversations faded. Phones lowered. The entire terminal seemed to pause. Queen Camilla, however, stayed composed. Her voice remained gentle, but there was a hint of confusion now. "I'm sure it's nothing. Probably just my travel documents." But the officer shook his head softly. "Ma'am, respectfully, it doesn't look like papers." That sentence was the moment everything changed. The royal guards moved instantly, forming a subtle but unmistakable protective circle around her. It wasn't aggressive, just defensive, alert, ready. Their eyes scanned every direction. Their hands hovered near their communication devices. "Clear the area," the chief murmured. Quietly, airport staff followed orders quickly. A barrier was formed. A pathway was emptied. The tension grew so thick you could almost feel it pressing against your chest. Inside the X-ray room, the mysterious object stared back at everyone from the screen, silent, immovable, intense. "What exactly are we looking at?" someone whispered. The officer shook his head. I don't know." That was the answer nobody wanted to hear. The chief leaned closer to the screen. The shape had weight, density, layers, something inside something. A container? A folded mechanism? It was impossible to tell. "Run a secondary scan," he ordered. They did. The result was identical. In that moment, it no longer mattered who the passenger was. Protocol demanded only one thing: caution. And caution, when applied to the royal family, always came with layers of consequences. "Ma'am," the chief said quietly to Camilla, "we need to ask you a few questions about what might be in your handbag." She hesitated, just slightly, not out of guilt, but out of genuine confusion. "My bag contains the usual things," she said. "My glasses, some letters, a keepsake." She paused. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, a tiny shift, but noticeable. "What kind of keepsake?" the chief asked. She didn't answer immediately. It was the first real sign that something emotional, something deeply personal, might be involved. The chief exhaled slowly. Not frustration, not fear, just a heavy understanding that whatever this object was, it wasn't going to be simple. And at that exact moment, a call came through on the guard's earpiece. A message from the palace. "Stand by. Do not proceed without clearance." London was waking up, and the story was about to explode. The room felt colder when the second scan confirmed the first. No alarms blared. No dramatic sirens filled the air. Yet the tension was louder than any sound Heathrow had ever produced. The Royal Guard chief stood still, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the screen like a man staring at a puzzle he had only moments to solve. Queen Camilla watched quietly, the faintest trace of worry softening her expression. She wasn't frightened. She had lived too long in the spotlight for fear to show so easily. But there was a weight in her eyes now, something unspoken, something that hinted she might already have an idea what the officers were seeing, but wasn't ready to say it aloud. The chief cleared his throat, increased contrast. The officer adjusted the settings, the image glowing brighter, the object sharpening in definition. The outline became more distinct, revealing a curved top, a compact center, and what looked like layers. Too many layers for anything ordinary. One of the officers swallowed. "Sir, this shape is not metallic. At least not fully." "That's the part worrying me," the chief muttered. Objects with mixed density were the hardest to classify. They weren't simply harmless items, nor immediately dangerous. They lived in the gray zone, the place where protocol demanded maximum caution. Outside, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Passengers sensed something unfolding and began to whisper among themselves. The quiet buzz grew with every passing minute, like static humming through the air. Airport staff moved with stiff professionalism, casting wary glances toward the semi-closed-off area where the Queen Consort stood calmly surrounded by her guards. A young officer, barely 25, hesitated before speaking. Should we treat this as a security threat? The chief shot him a stern look. We treat anything unexplained as a potential threat. That doesn't mean we assume the worst. But everyone felt the possibility hanging between the words. Queen Camilla took a small step forward. Her voice remained gentle, steady. May I see the image myself? The chief hesitated. Protocol didn't forbid it, but the situation was tense enough without a royal leaning over an active security station. Still, he nodded. Of course, ma'am. She approached slowly. When her eyes landed on the screen, something in her expression shifted, barely noticeable but real. A flicker of recognition, maybe a memory, a sting. She placed a hand near her collar, exhaling quietly. Oh! That single word carried more meaning than a page of explanations. The chief narrowed his eyes. Ma'am, do you know what that is? She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she looked at the screen with a strange tenderness, as if the object displayed wasn't a threat, but a story, one she hadn't expected anyone to uncover today. It's personal, she finally whispered. Personal wasn't the answer anyone wanted. Personal could mean harmless, but it could also mean something that didn't belong in airport clearance at all. The chief lowered his voice. Ma'am, with all due respect, personal or not, we need clarity. Camilla nodded slowly, her composure steadying. I understand, but I prefer to explain once we're in a private room. That was enough for the officers to pause. Privacy for royalty wasn't a request, it was protocol. The chief ordered the area cleared, and within minutes, they were escorted to a small, secure briefing room near the security wing. In that quiet space, away from the curious stares and whispered rumors, the tension changed. It felt more intimate, more human. A guard shut the door softly. The scanner operator rolled in a portable monitor, displaying the frozen X-ray image. The chief faced her. Ma'am, please help us understand what we're looking at. She lifted her handbag onto the table, a small, elegant thing of polished leather, completely ordinary on the outside, completely extraordinary on the inside, apparently. Her fingers hovered above the clasp. She hesitated, not in fear, but in emotion, the kind that makes a person breathe twice before opening a part of their life they'd kept protected. Then she opened it. The room leaned in. Inside, she reached past expected items, glasses case, letters, travel pouch, and carefully lifted a small wrapped bundle. It was folded in delicate, aged fabric, the kind that looked like it had been handled 1,000 times with love rather than carelessness. She placed it gently on the table. The chief frowned slightly. Is that cloth? Camilla shook her head. Not just cloth. Her hands unfolded the wrapping piece by piece until the object inside glimmered faintly in the light. A compact, curved silver frame, ornate but worn. Not jewelry, not modern, something far older, something historical. The officers exchanged confused glances. Camilla exhaled softly. It belonged to Diana. The room froze. The chief blinked. Diana as in... Yes, she said quietly. The late Princess of Wales. Silence swallowed the air. Inside the folded fabric was a small silver locket, no bigger than a matchbox. Its surface was engraved with an intricate pattern of roses and ivy. Beautiful, delicate, unmistakably sentimental. Camilla touched it gently, like one might touch a memory. It was given to me recently by someone who thought I should carry it. Someone who believed it represents forgiveness more than conflict. A piece of history, yes, but also a piece of healing. The chief stared. Forgive me, ma'am, but why'd it look so strange on the X-ray? Camilla opened the locket delicately. Inside was a miniature portrait, one of Diana as a young mother, holding William as a toddler. The detail was astonishing. The edges of the portrait were lined with old metallic backing, uneven and dense. Beneath it, tucked into the hidden compartment, was a folded note, yellowed with age. What is that? The officer whispered. Camilla smiled sadly. A letter, handwritten, from Diana to Charles. No one breathed for several seconds. It wasn't a scandalous letter, not explosive, not political, but deeply emotional, something the world had never known existed. A letter full of hope for her sons, reminders of love, and a rare moment of peace from a woman who rarely found it. Camilla continued softly. William gave it to me, quietly, privately. He said he wanted his mother's softer moments preserved, not hidden, not glorified, simply carried forward, as a reminder that the past doesn't have to be a battlefield. The chief exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment settling in. This wasn't a threat. It wasn't a breach. It was a relic, a symbol. And London was about to learn that the object which halted the Queen Consort at Heathrow wasn't dangerous. It was heartbreakingly human. Camilla rewrapped the locket carefully, reverently, placing it back inside her bag. I understand why it caused concern, she said softly. But this is not meant for headlines. It is meant for remembrance. The chief nodded, voice low. We'll handle it discreetly, ma'am. But outside that room, the world was already spinning. Someone had seen the commotion. Someone had recorded the guards. Someone had posted Queen Camilla stopped by airport security online. London was already buzzing. And soon, the truth would hit even harder. Rumors travel faster than truth, especially in London, where every whisper has the power to become a headline. By the time Queen Camilla stepped out of the private security room, escorted by the royal guard with subtle but unmistakable change in their posture, the airport had already transformed into a sea of questions. Passengers were filming. Airport staff exchanged wide-eyed glances. And someone, no one ever figured out who, had already posted a blurry video titled, "Something huge going on with Queen Camilla at Heathrow." Within minutes, social media lit up like a wildfire. Hashtag royal security. Hashtag Camilla stopped. Hashtag Heathrow incident. Panic? Not exactly. But curiosity? London practically lived on it. Across the city, in coffee shops, office elevators, and early morning taxis, people were refreshing their phones, squinting at the grainy footage, trying to decode what they were seeing. A royal being stopped by airport security was unheard of, unthinkable, but the video made it undeniable. Some viewers insisted it was nothing, routine, probably exaggerated. Others whispered about threats, secret messages, forbidden objects. And without fail, a handful insisted it was something scandalous, because of course they would. But none of them imagined the truth. No one even came close. In the palace, the reaction was even more intense. The private phone lines buzzed with urgency. Advisors rushed through hallways. Senior officials demanded updates every 5 minutes. The monarchy had weathered storms before, but this was different. This wasn't a political crisis or a public controversy. This was personal. And personal stories, when leaked, were the hardest to control. Inside Clarence's house, Prince William had just finished a briefing when an aide hurried in, flustered, holding a tablet. "Sir, there's an issue at Heathrow. With your stepmother." William frowned. "Issue? What kind of issue?" The aide hesitated. Security flagged something in her bag. For a heartbeat, William froze. Then realization flickered in his eyes. The locket he had given to Camilla privately, quietly. It wasn't meant to be a grand gesture. It wasn't meant to be political or symbolic or strategic. It was just human, a moment of peace he hoped could exist between the tangled chapters of their family's history. "Is she all right?" he asked quickly. "Yes, sir, but videos are spreading and people are speculating." William exhaled, a long, slow breath pulled from somewhere deep in his chest. Of course they are. Across London, everyday people were having a very different reaction. Many felt a twist in their stomach at the sight of a royal being stopped so publicly. The monarchy represents stability. Moments like this cracked the image, if only slightly. At a bakery in South Kensington, 2 women leaned over their croissants. "Did you see the video? They stopped Queen Camilla." "Stopped her for what?" "No idea, but the guards looked tense." On a crowded tube train, a teenage boy showed his friends the footage. "This is mad. Imagine being the officer who had to tell her to step aside. What do you think they found? Dunno, probably something huge. In a small flat overlooking the Thames, an elderly man shook his head slowly at the television. This family never gets a quiet day, do they? But for every wild theory, there were also people who simply felt sympathy. It wasn't common to feel sorry for royalty. But that morning, something about the footage, Camilla standing quietly, surrounded but strangely alone, stirred a kind of collective tenderness. A royal, stopped, questioned, vulnerable. It reminded everyone that beneath the titles and protocol lived a woman who had lived through decades of public judgment, scrutiny, and headlines. Someone murmured in a pub, "Whatever it is, she looked shaken. I hope she's all right." That sentiment spread faster than the rumors. In the palace, things escalated. Someone proposed issuing a statement. Another argued they should stay silent until they knew exactly what the public had seen. Advisors debated whether transparency or restraint was wiser. In the midst of the chaos, King Charles received the news. He didn't shout. He didn't panic. But his reaction was unmistakable. He closed his eyes briefly, a shadow crossing his expression. "What did they find?" he asked with quiet gravity. When told it was a locket, Diana's locket, Charles fell still, not angry, not upset, just contemplative, almost fragile, as if old memories had pushed their way to the surface. "Ah," he whispered, "that explains everything." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. The past, with all its wounds and misunderstandings, had resurfaced in the most unexpected way. Meanwhile, back at Heathrow, Queen Camilla waited in a private lounge, sipping tea offered by a nervous attendant. She wasn't angry at the delay. She wasn't frustrated by the procedures. She simply sat quietly, the locket now safely tucked back inside her bag. But inside her mind, a thought lingered. How would the world interpret this? Would they understand? Would they twist it? A royal item connected to Diana was always volatile. It carried history like a pulse. It carried emotion like fire. Minutes later, her phone buzzed with a call. William. She hesitated before answering. Their relationship had grown steadier over the years, but conversations involving Diana were always delicate. "Are you all right?" William's voice came through warm, concerned. "I'm fine," she replied softly. "Just surprised, embarrassed, perhaps." "You shouldn't be." His voice was gentle. "I'm the one who gave you the locket. I should have warned you it might cause trouble on a security scan." Camilla closed her eyes. "It's not your fault, and it's not the object's fault either." There was a pause, a meaningful one. "You still have it with you?" William asked. "I do." Another pause. "Good," he said quietly, almost emotionally. It was meant to be kept close. Camilla swallowed. Few conversations between them ever felt this raw. But what neither of them knew was that outside, on every phone, every screen, every conversation in the city, the narrative was spiraling. Why was Camilla flagged? Did she bring something dangerous? What's the palace hiding? Is this connected to Diana somehow? People didn't know the truth yet, but the clues, the tension, the footage, all created a storm that refused to settle. By afternoon, every major news outlet had picked up the story. Reporters gathered outside Heathrow. Helicopter cameras hovered. Photographers chased every guard leaving the terminal. The monarchy was officially in crisis mode. And yet, deep beneath the noise, something unexpected was happening. A shift. People began defending her. Come on, she didn't do anything wrong. It's airport protocol. It happens to everyone. She handled it with dignity. She looked human. Those last words echoed more than the rest. Human, and that, in an odd twist of fate, softened London's heart. Because for the first time in a long time, Queen Camilla wasn't seen as a symbol. She wasn't a public figure being judged. She was just a woman carrying something meaningful. And the world had accidentally seen it. By evening, London was bracing for the truth. And the truth, gentle, emotional, unexpected, was about to reshape everything. By the time evening painted the London sky in muted gold, the city felt like it was holding its breath. News vans clustered outside Buckingham Palace. Reporters rehearsed their lines. Photographers raised cameras toward every tinted window that passed. Helicopters circled like restless birds, waiting for movement. Any movement from the royals. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted the truth behind Heathrow. What they got was far more emotional than any of them expected. Inside Clarence's house, the atmosphere was vastly different, quiet, intimate, almost fragile. Queen Camilla had returned under discreet escort, slipping through a side entrance shielded from the public eye. The moment she stepped inside, the calm she had maintained throughout the day began to thin. She removed her coat slowly, almost mechanically. The locket, wrapped, hidden, safe, remained in her handbag. Her steps were steady, but something in her expression betrayed exhaustion. A soft emotional weight pulled at her features, the kind that comes from carrying more than just a misunderstood object. She hadn't expected the day to unfold like this. She hadn't expected an airport scanner to reveal something she had carried so privately. And she certainly hadn't expected the world to react with such hunger. As she entered her quiet sitting room, she found Charles waiting. He stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back, watching the twilight fade. When he turned, his expression softened instantly. "Are you all right?" he asked. Camilla nodded, though her eyes glistened faintly. It was unusual. He approached, taking her hands gently. For a long moment, they simply stood there, two people who had weathered storms together, facing yet another unexpected wave. Finally, he asked, "May I see it?" She hesitated, but only briefly, before reaching into her bag and retrieving the wrapped object. Carefully, she placed it on a small table between them and unfolded the cloth. The locket glimmered under the warm lamplight. Charles's breath caught, not loudly, not dramatically, but softly, painfully, like a memory brushing against a bruise. He reached for it with trembling fingers, running his thumb gently along the engraved roses. "I remember when she had this made," he whispered. She said William's smile should be carried close to her heart. Camilla watched him quietly. For all the complicated history between them, this moment felt strangely pure, honest, delicate, unguarded. Charles opened the locket, revealing the miniature portrait inside. When his eyes lingered on the image of Diana cradling William, 1,000 emotions flickered through his expression. Love, regret, nostalgia, something else unnamed. "She kept every small joy," he murmured, "even when the world thought she was breaking." Camilla placed a gentle hand on his arm. She loved them fiercely. His eyes glistened. Yes, she did. For a moment, silence filled the room. Not heavy, but respectful, the kind that allows memories to breathe without rushing them. Then Camilla carefully lifted the folded note from the locket's hidden compartment. She handed it to him quietly. "You should read it again." He hesitated, then unfolded the fragile paper with slow precision, as though it might crumble if touched too firmly. The handwriting, light, looping, recognizably Diana's, seemed to glow softly under the lamp. Charles read it silently. It wasn't a letter of conflict or farewell. It wasn't angry. It wasn't tragic. It was simple. A letter written on a quiet evening decades ago, meant for no audience, no newspaper, no historian. A letter where Diana wrote about her boys, how she hoped they would grow with kindness, confidence, and love, how she hoped they would forgive the world's cruelty, how she wanted Charles to remain connected to them, even when the public storms threatened to pull him away. It was, in many ways, the most vulnerable kind of message, and as Charles read it, tears gathered in the corners of his eyes. Not falling, just resting, the way unspoken apologies often do. He folded the letter gently, returning it to Camilla with trembling hands. "Thank you," he whispered, "for carrying this." Camilla gave a small, warm smile. "I thought it mattered. Not politically, not publicly, just personally, for the family, for the boys." "It does," he said, voice tight. "More than you know." A knock on the door broke the moment. An aide stepped in, apologetic. "Your Majesties, the press is escalating. They're demanding a statement. The story is spiraling." Charles exchanged a look with Camilla, one of quiet resolve. He straightened his posture. "Very well," he said. Prepare a statement. Camilla placed a hand on his arm. May I speak as well? He paused and nodded. Yes, I think you should. Within an hour, cameras were rolling outside Buckingham Palace. Reporters leaned forward, microphones raised, pens ready, nerves crackling. Inside, the palace released a written statement. Simple, clear, surprising. The item identified during airport screening was a personal family keepsake belonging to the late Diana, Princess of Wales. It was being transported privately as a symbol of remembrance and unity within the family. No security concern was present. The world froze. For a moment, even the tabloids paused. A Diana keepsake, carried by Camilla, given by William? The emotional weight of that revelation rippled across social media. Some gasped, some cried, some smiled gently, because, in a way, the story wasn't about airport scanners or royal protocol anymore. It was about healing. It was about history finding a softer landing. It was about a family, fractured and mended in pieces, quietly choosing peace over legacy battles. Outside the palace, crowds gathered, not angry, not chaotic, but quietly stirred. People spoke in softer tones than usual. I never thought I'd see the day William trusted her with something like that. This is actually quite beautiful. It feels like they're finally at peace. Inside Clarence's house, Camilla sat beside the window, watching the lights outside flicker like stars scattered across the ground. She held the locket gently, brushing her thumb along its surface. For the first time all day, she allowed herself to feel everything fully. The weight, the love, the grief, the hope. A quiet knock sounded. William stepped in. He didn't bow. He didn't speak at first. He simply walked to her side, looking at the locket glowing softly in her hands. Thank you, he said quietly. Camilla looked up. For what? For not letting today turn into something ugly. For protecting something that meant so much to my mother. She smiled, a small, warm, human smile. She was your mother. She always will be. I only hope to honor her memory, not replace it. William nodded slowly. You did. He gently closed her hand around the locket. Keep it close, he said. That's where she'd want it. Outside, London was exhaling at last. The storm was settling. And in the most unexpected twist, a moment born from confusion and fear had become a rare glimpse into the royal family's private heart. A heart full of complexity, history, forgiveness, and deep, undeniable humanity. The airport incident didn't expose danger. It exposed healing. And for once, the whole world felt it.